the nickel position. The Niners, they're not even that confident about their plan here. At safety, they're like, we have Talanoa. He's great. At nickel, they're like, well, we have Darqueze Dennard, who we got off the practice squad last year, and we drafted a guy in the 5th round this year, and we drafted a guy in the 5th round last year. Like, I think they're just kind of going to see what happens in training camp. They don't have any expectations of who's going to take the job. And I'm wondering, like, is a competition full of backups really a competition? If someone wins, does that mean you have a starter? Do the Niners have a starting nickelback? Because the Rams have a slot receiver, Cooper Kupp, who's like the best player in the league. So it's kind of important. And the Niners had a good slot corner last year in K'Wan Williams, but they couldn't re-sign him because Jimmy's on the team. So he went to Denver. That's a very good team right now. So I'm curious, did the Niners actually have a plan here at nickel, or is this like a financial sacrifice because Jimmy's here?
Iggy, tell the viewers what the nickelback does and why it's an important position.
The nickelback is the corner who covers the slot receiver, the corner in the middle. So the two corners on the outside, that's a tough job because you have to be able to cover the deep pass. You have to be really fast, and you have to be pretty big. But you get to use the sideline as an extra defender. Remember Nnamdi Asomugha used to do that. He was really good. It's almost like you have help. You have a safety over the top. You have a sideline over there. In the slot, it's arguably harder because the wide receiver can go left and right. So you can't really overplay one direction like you could on the outside. The wide receiver has what coaches call a two-way go. That's really tough to cover. So you kind of have to play straight up, honest, and be so quick and fast that you can just follow this guy around wherever he goes. And you're covering the quickest receiver on the team. It's hard. It's really hard to do. Hard.
Iggy, is the nickelback in on all the downs?
No, it's in when the offense has 3 wide receivers on the field. But the thing is, as the NFL has evolved over the last 30 years, teams have 3 wide receivers on the field more and more and more. There are some teams that have 3 wide receivers on the field all the time. There are some teams that have 4 wide receivers on the field. So more and more, like 20 years ago, it wasn't really a starting position. It was someone who would play maybe 30%. Now it's like 70% of the snaps. It's basically a starting position. And you might want to have someone who's really good there because a lot of teams put their best receiver in the slot. Niners do it with Debo. Cardinals do it with DeAndre Hopkins. Rams do it with Kupp. So if your best corner can't cover in the slot, you can't really match up with some of the best receivers in the league.
And that's what New England has used a lot
for 10, 15 years. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
When you put in a nickel, do you take out a linebacker?
Yes, you do. Yes, absolutely. So he's, in a sense, it's a tough position, right? Because what if they run the ball?
Yeah.
Now you're a linebacker, essentially. You have to go take on a block, make a tackle. So you have to be like the best coverage guy on the team, but you also have to be tough and durable and a good tackler. So to me, like the Niners are always looking for that player in round 5. Like, look what we just described, the skill set we just described. That's hard to find. The Packers, who have maybe an even better defense than the Niners, their nickel back was a first-round pick, Jair Alexander. They're not messing around. It's very important. And usually in the secondary, you have a bunch of top picks. The Niners are still thinking they can find diamonds in the rough, and sometimes they do. But I'm curious to see if they have this year.
Right. And again, you're not saying they don't.
They haven't.
But it's one of the storylines that you'll explore.
Right. Like they're confident they can do it because K'Wan Williams was an undrafted free agent. They think there are certain traits they can pinpoint that are there later in the draft. All right, they got a guy in round 5 this year, Samuel Womack. Let's see it. Because so far in camp, he looks pretty good. He hasn't played with the starters yet, but he looks pretty good.
And let's face it, John Lynch was a great defensive back. Hall of Fame.
Great defensive back. Here's what kills me. He's been the GM. This is his 6th season, going into his 6th season. He's one of the best strong safeties of all time. The Niners have drafted only 3 safeties since he's been here, and none before round 5. That's amazing. How could he talk himself into safety being the least important position on the team? It's amazing. Maybe he just felt he was that good. I don't know. Or maybe it's bigger than him.
Recently, I was talking to Fred Von Oppen. He used to be a coach with the Niners. I never become friends with people I cover, except Fred and I are friends and have been dear friends for decades. And we were chatting on the phone the other day, and I was mentioning John Lynch because he coached John Lynch at Stanford. Fred did. He was the defensive coordinator. And I said, Fred, did you use him as a strong safety? He said, no. We used him as a free safety. We had 3 other defensive backs, but we felt he read the defense so brilliantly, and he was
Wow.
such a great tackler. We wanted him all over the place. So they used him as, let's say, free safety / strong safety.
That's very interesting. And if I remember correctly, when he was in the league, he played in Tampa, which was famous for that Tampa 2 defense, which means it was him and another guy playing deep. So he would have half the field. But he
Gotcha.
wasn't down in the box. He was deep playing half the field. And I guess he
Yeah.
was great. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to say, Fred, whenever he talks about Lynch, it's with the greatest respect. And he also said, and Lowell, he was a Stanford athlete. He's so smart and he's so mature. Now, Fred hasn't seen him in a long time, obviously, but even as a Stanford player, he speaks about him with Lynch with reverence.
Fred was the defensive coordinator on that team, right?
On when Bill came back in 1992, Fred was his defensive coordinator. And I got to know Fred because I wrote a book on that team. And so I got closer to the coaching staff than I ordinarily would, because I would be in coaches' meetings. And Fred, it would piss him off that I would say this. He's an intellectual. And what we didn't know each other. And he was very leery of me. And Tom Homo, who was on the squad, told me, who was a coach, Fred, you say, why the hell is that journalist here? Why is he here? It really pisses me off. You could hear Fred saying it. Then one day in a coaches meeting, he leaves a poem. He typed it out from William Carlos Williams, a little tiny poem. And I realized he's trying to be friendly. And I went home and I told Mom, and I showed her the poem, and she said, he's reaching out. And then we started talking about literature and poetry, and we became dear friends starting in 1992. I love him. I love Fred Van Appen.
Well, I was just wanted to say, so he was a defensive coordinator of that team, and John Lynch was by far the best defensive player in that team, right? John Lynch.
Yeah, they had another cornerback. I'm bad on names. They had a cornerback who went into the NFL and was very good, but Lynch was the best.
Okay, Lynch was the best. And Lynch was a quarterback at first, and they had to sell him on playing defense, and they had to get him to – I'm sure I could totally see why Fred would be proud. I mean, they discovered John Lynch. They started the John Lynch at safety legend.
Yes, and this is what Fred also told me, that he would do football practice, but he was a star baseball player.
Right.
So then he would run over to the baseball field. And
right.
He was a two-sport guy.
Right. And if I remember correctly, this is before my time, but reading your book, John Lynch's signature moment in college was the Stanford played Notre Dame.
That's right. He made 2 key tackles in that game.
Notre Dame had Jerome Bettis, right?
Yeah.
And he was just phenomenal. And John Lynch got him a few times.
Got him.
Yeah.
Fred recently told me that early in the game, he misread a play and he went for the wrong guy. It's funny how these coaches are. They can remember every single play. Like golfers can remember every single shot that they've ever taken, right?
Right. I bet Fred could remember the down and distance on that too.
All of that. And then he said, but after that, he was unbelievable. Yeah.
Wow. But there was one play. Hey, I had to ding you, John. That's great. Matthew Sanders says, hijinks are fine, but please no Donnie Brooks, Grant. And no tomfoolery. James Haywood says, Grant, great work. Interested to know what made you make your first YouTube video and how was the reaction? This is a true story. So the Niners drafted Mike McGlinchey. I didn't think he was the right pick. He was doing minicamp. They used to let you film one-on-ones. They used to do one-on-ones at minicamp and OTAs. I wanted to show people what I was seeing from Mike McGlinchey. The reason I started my YouTube channel was to just put up videos of Mike McGlinchey against Cassius Marsh. That's how it started. If you go back and look, the first videos, I think I had to take him down. They made me take him down like a year later. There's a rule. But anyway, it was just to show Mike McGlinchey. That's all. That was the genesis of this.
But Iggy, tell them who it was that encouraged you to start doing videos.
Robert Saleh.
Tell about that story.
Well, there was there's this guy, Brian Baldinger on NFL Network, who started using coaches' film to do breakdowns on Twitter. And a lot of people took the idea. I took the idea. It was a great idea. I want to do it for the Niners. And I did a little bit of it, and Saleh was impressed. And he said I should focus on it. And so now, every Tuesday during the season, me and Jack Hammer do the film breakdown. And that was Robert Saleh's suggestion. He basically said that, it's the age of information, give people the information that they want. I do. He's very proud of me, by the way, in this YouTube channel. He's proud that I made it independently. as he said. Anyway,
I would like to add to that.
yeah.
You understand what Iggy's saying, that when Robert Saleh was the defensive coordinator of the 49ers, Saleh and Iggy had a back channel that Saleh created, not Iggy.
No.
Saleh reached out to Iggy and said, I see something in you. And he also said, all the other coaches here can't stand you, right?
Yeah. Well, the way it first started was like 2018, the second year. I was doing post-practice reports, and everyone watches those, even the coaches. He came up to me before practice. He was like, "Hey, man, I love your videos. I watch them every day." I was like, "Thanks, Robert." He said, "There are you do have a lot of conspiracy theories, though." It's like, if you ever want the answers to the questions, why don't you just call me? I was like, "Really? Are you serious?" Like, yeah. So ever since then, I mean, he wasn't like giving me information I shouldn't have. He wasn't going behind Kyle's back and telling
No,
me
he
stuff
was
I shouldn't
nothing like
know.
that.
It was very innocent, and he like, hey, you need to understand this is why Jimmy Ward's good, or hey, you need to understand this is why I called the game this way. It was very helpful to have that relationship. Yep.
Yeah. So I am eternally grateful to Saleh. And one other thing, and this is really serious. When Mom died on February 12th, within a week, Saleh called you.
He did. He absolutely did.
No coaches on the 49ers called Iggy. Their business. Bill Walsh would have, but Saleh called from New Jersey to talk to Iggy and to comfort him. So I've never met Saleh, but I love Saleh.
Right. And it's not like there's anything I could do for him at this point in his career.
Yeah,
he just didn't.
He didn't need you. He's
No.
just a wonderful, wonderful human being.
Mike got the gun, says K1 was decent at best. To be honest, he was slow as well. Yeah, he was better in zone, but he was a good tackler. He could blitz. Do the Niners have someone that good? Is my question.